Hello and welcome to the Europe Conversation. My guest this week is Irish Prime Minister on Taoiseach, Micheál Martin. He speaks to me following his first meeting as Prime Minister with Ursula von der Leyen, President of the European Commission. He talks to her about the ongoing trade war with the United States and what he describes as hell on earth, Gaza. Micheál Martin, Irish Prime Minister and Taoiseach, thank you very much for joining us on the Europe Conversation.
You're very welcome. Delighted to be here.
And you met with Ursula von der Leyen, your first time meeting her since becoming Taoiseach. Can I ask you first of all, the EU recently announced potential tariffs against the United States if there's no resolution to the 90-day negotiation period. Is Ireland supportive of that?
Yeah, we're members of the European Union and we appreciate the very measured and strategic approach that the Commission, led by President von der Leyen, has taken to date, and we've been supportive of that. The pathway here has to be one of negotiation, and we welcome the fact that there's been a degree of engagement between the US administration and the European Commission on the fundamental issues pertaining to tariffs and trade overall between the European Union and the United States. And remember, of course, apart from goods, there's a huge services trade between the US and Europe's in deficit on services, surplus on goods. So on the countermeasures, every member state will have issues with some aspects on that, but that's inevitable. We don't want to get to a position where Europe may have to deploy countermeasures. We, from the outset, don't believe in the imposition of tariffs.
In relation to pharmaceuticals, which make up around 50% of Ireland's exports to the United States, I mean, that would have a huge impact on the Irish economy.
We have a strong centre of innovative drugs. We believe, even within Europe, we need to create a good window, IP window, to enable companies to get their deserved reward for investment in research and investment in innovation. So we always have to support innovation. Now, in terms of any deal, I think the citizen needs access to medicines. And again, Europe and America have a lot in common here.
I want to just move on because Ireland is taking the presidency of the European Council in 2026, and part of that will be negotiating the 7-year EU budget. There is a very strong consensus that defence and security has to be a key part of that. Can you see where the trade-offs might be in relation to the budget? Will there be a reduction, for example, on the common agricultural policy? Can Ireland see where there may be trade-offs?
Well, Ireland is very focused on the common agricultural policy. We're focused on research as a key part of our competitiveness agenda within Europe. I'm a strong believer in research myself and the benefits that flow from it. We've just discussed pharmaceutical research and the important impact that has had on lives and lifespan. I think the fundamental question will be how much money will be available, the need to develop some own resources, and the fact that most people are looking for more expenditure on different aspects of the budget, but not as clear on how we produce the revenue to meet the desired expenditure. And of course, we have to deal with Next Generation EU, paying back the loans and so on, which Ireland supported that, even though we were net contributors. We supported, if you like, the big bazooka approach to COVID-19 and the collective approach.
Did Ireland support something like common borrowing for defence?
I think on defence, we accept the inevitability that in terms of the multi-financial framework, there will be member states who will want some portion of that to be allocated to defence needs. Ireland has no interest in getting in the way of other countries in terms of their necessities, their existential sense of having to protect themselves, given the Russian invasion of Ukraine. That has changed the entire security paradigm in Europe. Ireland itself understands we have vulnerabilities on cyber security, on subsea cable and protecting those, and that's why we're involved in a lot of PESCO projects, or quite a number of PESCO projects on that, and why we've negotiated an individually tailored programme with NATO under Partnership for Peace on those themes of cybersecurity and subsea cables as well.
And are you concerned about the threat to democracy in Europe at the moment when you see the growth of quite hard right parties, whether it's Germany, all across Europe at the moment, and also you see certain aspects of it within the White House administration when it comes to freedom of expression, due process?
Well, I'm very worried about the coarseness of language in public discourse at the moment, no matter where you go. Even in Ireland, and social media has facilitated this, this kind of sharp soundbite of hate, of dismissing everybody if you don't agree with their view, of labelling people and putting people into pigeonholes. The capacity to have debate, as we're having now, is fast slipping away from the public realm a bit, and that worries me.
Are you concerned about it in the United States, though, or even in Europe? And even if you look in places like Hungary, the reduction of rights for LGBT
We are very
communities.
concerned about that in Hungary in terms of the undermining of the LGBTI community, the banning of pride parades. These are very fundamental issues that Europe has to engage with, the European Union. And there's a tendency, I look at some of the rhetoric that's emanating from the Hungarian government towards Europe. I mean, we'll conquer Europe, or we'll take them over, or we'll have a common something. So all that stuff is, I think, is inflaming public opinion in a very negative way. I mean, most European citizens like the fact that they're part of the European Union. I said in a speech recently, in the European Union, we have all of that, freedom of speech. We have regulated markets. We have good standards in food and across the board. We have stability. Who wouldn't want to live in an environment like that?
Do you think that the EU should do more in relation to this?
Yes, and I think also we should do more to provide a positive narrative of what being a member of the European Union
Would you like
means.
to see maybe Article 7 or other
I think there are many instruments we have.
Yeah.
Article 7 is one. I think we should pursue all instruments. I think, we've always accepted unanimity on certain aspects. We think it's been abused. And I believe the European Union will not become workable if that abuse continues. And I think there's only so much member states can take in terms of willful abuse of the veto. We've seen it play out in Ukraine. So there are a number of instruments that we can use, and we shouldn't be afraid to use them.
In Ukraine, Ireland's obviously very supportive of enlargement and Ukraine becoming an EU member state. Do you think that's going to be possible, seeing as that it's all blocked at the moment?
It's outrageous what's going on at the moment. In my view, it's essential that Ukraine becomes a member of the European Union for geopolitical reasons. And I think Europe probably missed opportunities over the last decade or two in terms of the Western Balkans as well. And I'd like to see, Montenegro and North Macedonia and other states in the Western Baltics in due course become members also. And I've been an advocate of this for quite some time. But it seems that people are exploiting the mechanisms of the veto and so on.
As in Viktor Orban, Hungary.
Yeah, unreasonably, in my view. Unreasonably. Europe has made a lot of attempts to try and unblock these issues through mediation and engagement. And likewise, in terms of the EPF, the European Peace Facility as well, has been, in many, slowed down Ireland's contribution to Ukraine. We contributed non-lethal finance to that, hasn't been able to be utilised and so on. Now we're doing it bilaterally.
One area that you have been at odds with the EU consensus is in relation to Israel and Gaza. And earlier, before, you've criticised Israel for committing war crimes, be it starvation and so on. Tell us about your engagement with Ursula von der Leyen in relation to that.
It's quite shocking what is now happening within Gaza. To have an effective blockade for 50 days and more, 60 days maybe now, in terms of food, in terms of the essentials of life, the bare necessities of life, in my view, must be considered a war crime. And I don't say that easily. I want a resolution. We want the restoration of the ceasefire. We want the release of all hostages. In my view, it was shocking to take people as hostages. These were innocent people at a concert in their kibbutz. I went to kibbutz Be'eri myself to see it firsthand, the impact of the horrific Hamas attack on Israel. And that was shocking and horrible. And I've condemned it from the outset, and I went there to show empathy with the people who had been attacked. So all those, the hostages should have been released a long time ago. But the war that has been waged in response, in my view, has lost any moral compass at this stage in terms of its unacceptable impact on the civilian population and on children. And in Ireland, there's real desperate sadness now and horror and a sense of helplessness at what we see on our TV screens of young children on stretchers in hospitals, very badly injured, many families being wiped out, kids being orphaned. From a humanity point of view, it's beyond comprehension. And what's happening now in terms of a doubling down by Israel in terms of occupation and intensification of the war on the ground, they've bombed hospitals. And I know that Israel will say, well, Hamas are in the hospitals and so forth. Like, kids need a basic access to medicine. Many externally funded hospitals from international organizations or indeed from other countries have been bombed. Life has been, I mean, humanitarian workers have been murdered in terms of Red Crescent and so on that we saw recently. And I think the weaponization of the very basic necessities of life, from my perspective, is a breach of humanitarian law. And I think that raises very significant issues for us then, for Europe, in terms of the EU-Israel Association Agreement and the human rights clauses that are part of that. And so there has to be a discussion of that now.
But when we look back at this moment, obviously the EU being a union of international law, what will you say, people will say about Europe's response?
That is my core point. Like, I think this is fundamental to Europe and to the European Union, what we stand for. And, you know, we have communicated to other countries around the world in terms of Ukraine and the violation of its territorial integrity, a different war, and the situation in the Middle East, I accept fully the complexities and all of that, but it's the unacceptable level of death and destruction and displacement, and it is, many people have said it, going back to 2011, it's hell on earth, and it really poses the most fundamental of questions to the European Union in terms of our values and what we're prepared to stand up for.
Okay, Micheál Martin, Prime Minister of Ireland and Taoiseach, thank you very much for joining us on the Europe Conversation.
Very welcome indeed, yeah, thank you.